In the world of Plants vs Zombies, you're provided with a board consisting of up to 6 rows and 9 columns, which allows us to add a variety of lots of different plants together to form our favorite defense. Now, let's imagine for a second that all of that is taken away from you. We already know that Plants vs Zombies can be beaten with just one column alone, but what if we took a completely different stance on this? Hey, what's up? I'm Samen, and today we'll give you the definitive answer to the never before asked question: can Plants vs Zombies be beaten with only 3 columns in your front? First up, the rules. Rule number 1. We can only use the front 3 columns at all times. Yes, do not even think about it. And, yeah, that's pretty much it. We'll also explore in this video why having just the front 3 columns to plant on, compared to the one in the far back, sucks. And what obstacles we will have to face off. That also made me secretly cry in my sleep, but for now it's officially time to very quickly get into it. The challenge truly only begins at day 3, which was also the first level where I had my brains eaten by the zombies. You see, here comes the first problem with this challenge. Zombies spawn extremely fast. Okay, hold on a moment. Why on earth would this even be the case, and what does it have to do with our pea shooters being in the front? It's actually quite simple, and we can thank the 50% spawning rule mechanic of PvZ. You see, the way Plants vs Zombies knows when to progress to its next wave is either when the timer until the next wave runs out, which ranges from 25 to 31 seconds, or when 50% of the total wave's health has been removed. So let's just imagine that you have a wave which consists of 2 basic zombies. When eliminating one out of the 2 basic zombies with, let's say, a potato mine, the 50% rule function gets triggered since only 50% or less of the health of our current wave has survived, which will tell the game to spawn the next wave of zombies in. Typically, this game mechanic can be exploited in certain genres in the game, for example when I did my 0 to 50 time-lapse video of the No Sunflower challenge on my channel way back in 2016. By intentionally beating the zombies as slow as we can, we're able to buy ourselves a lot more time so we can collect more sun from the sky. We can also do the complete opposite approach and use this game mechanic to intentionally speed up our current waves, which normally is just used in speedruns for this game. For this challenge, however, this 50% rule is murdering us. With nowhere else to plant our attackers, we are basically forced to use them in the front, which causes the zombies to die a lot faster now. For us, this now means that all of our sun-producing plants and plant recharge time gets a lot worse. Day 4 was a lot more manageable despite us having to defend 5 lanes now, all thanks to Walnut. Just like the 12x HP video I did a while ago, Walnut becomes a godsend for the duration of this entire challenge. He fixes a lot of the problems we're facing, including us not being forced to beat the zombies as fast as we had to before, meaning it becomes our only tool for stalling for a while, and it's also a very cheap and efficient way of reinforcing a lane. I think we might have a small problem here. Well, I guess it's time to slightly bend the rules of this challenge. With my totally good PvZ1 modding skills, I was able to change this minigame around by changing the space which we are allowed to plant in. So instead of being limited to the first 3 columns, now we are limited to the last 3 columns. But Samen, you can't be doing that, that's cheating, you can't be doing that, I will unsubscribe right now. Alright, I know this will piss off a lot of people, so I will also provide a solution to this level right here. Yes, it is indeed technically possible to beat level 1.5 without doing anything. This boils down to it being a 1 flag level, which also only features 8 waves. That also allows us to have lawnmowers. With some perfect zombie spawning RNG, this level can be beaten with nothing but our lawnmowers, but keep in mind that you would probably have a better chance at winning the lottery 3 times in a row, while at the same time being struck by lightning, while also sitting at the toilet, so yeah, probably don't try this at home. I will also later discuss how I was able to record this perfect RNG run, and you will also know why I chose to play the Walnut Bowling minigame in both different ways. Day 6 as well as Day 7 mark the first levels that present a bit of a problematic zombie. I'm of course talking about pole vaulting zombie, and while normally not being the biggest threat in the game, he will prove to become one of the worst enemies in this challenge because of his stupid jump ability. Since we don't have a lot of space to begin with, we are now forced to have a sunflower ready at all times, so we're always able to trigger a pole vaulting zombie the moment he spawns in column 9. This then allows us to stall the pole vaulting zombie with a walnut on column 8, and yes, it's not the most elegant solution, but we gotta work with what we have, right? Thankfully, Day 7 offers us access to the bestest best plant in the entire franchise. Sure, Snoopy proves to be an invaluable tool to help us controlling the massive crowds in our currently small arsenal. But it is especially important here, considering Day 7 is the first 2-flag level we get. But 175 sun isn't exactly cheap to come by, especially not when playing at night, but we will get there in just a moment. Okay, I guess there was a lot to take in at once, so let's just take a bit of a breather. You see, beating Day 7 was no joke, and that was just the beginning of this challenge. We haven't even finished the first world yet, and if that was what we had to deal with now, who knows what awaits us from here. I'm in World 2 now. Yep, the 3 lost levels were really easy. To elaborate, Buckethead Zombie isn't a threat, unlike pole vaulting zombies, and yes, I'm aware that Day 9 also has pole vaulting zombies in it, but because of how the game works, the quantity of pole vaulters is naturally decreased thanks to Buckethead Zombie showing up. Just one Buckethead Zombie alone, for example, will already prevent 2 pole vaulting zombies from spawning, since his spawn weight is double the spawn weight of a pole vaulter. Also, while pole vaulters are more annoying in Day 10 because of the increased 3 times spawn multiplier, it's still possible to stall them long enough with EP shooters as cannon fodder until the pole vaulting zombies die from the accumulated damage. Keep in mind that it's important here to only use your snow piece in the 7th column, since this is the only place where they are safe from pole vaulting zombies. Also, using potato mines sucks for this challenge for obvious reasons, but until we unlock Squash, we're pretty much stuck with it. Honestly, I'm slowly getting used to this whole challenge. Maybe it isn't too bad after all. And the Graysons are stealing my available planting space. No! Oh, isn't that great? If the game expects you to literally plant your plants in the back so they can spam greystones in the front, we are already off to a terrible start. Especially since the numbers of greystones is starting to increase with each level we progress in. Night 1 wasn't too much of a challenge, other than the greystones ignoring the no spawn for 2 waves rules, once a lawnmower gets triggered in a lane at the end of a level. So, it's night 2 now, and it marks the very beginning of my sleepless nights. Get it? Cause it's night? Okay, I'll stop. Despite its appearance, this isn't just your typical night level, since I haven't even mentioned the worst part yet. Our sun production just becomes exponentially worse, since, you know, sun doesn't fall from the sky when it's night. Why do I keep explaining this to you? Everybody knows what night is. Anyway, where was I? Oh yeah, while we did unlock Sunshroom earlier, it's not nearly as good as it needs to be. Well, similar to before, our mushrooms are forced to take out the zombies rather quick, before they reach the 7th column. The reason that is a problem is because it not only gives our sunshrooms less time to grow, but they also produce less sun overall, which paired up with the fact that there won't be any sun from the sky, and that the greystones in the front block off a good chunk of our available planting space, and you very quickly understand in what conundrum we found ourselves in. I mean, there had to be a reason why nobody has attempted this before. This is already starting to become a disaster, but I've dealt with challenges putting up such a big fight before. And if you've watched my video where I increased the health of every single zombie by 12 times, you'll be familiar with the zombie spawn seed manipulation technique. To elaborate, every level on Plants vs Zombies has a predetermined set of zombies it spawns in, so it knows exactly which zombies spawn in which exact wave. Thanks to a function and PvZ tools, we're able to read the exact zombie seed before entering a level. In other words, we can restart a level for as long as we want without ever playing it until we get our desired zombie seed, which favors us in this specific scenario. Just to make it easier for you to visualize what I mean, since I haven't done that in my 12x video, I'll translate this chart into an image that hopefully makes things clear for you now. Also, this won't be the only RNG manipulation method for this world. You see, the game spawns greystones at the start of each level, and if you pay close attention, then you'll realize that it's always the same number of greystones in each column. The only thing that will be different each time will be in which row the greystone spawns in. Unfortunately, the greystone placement will remain unchanged no matter how often you restart the level, but don't worry, I got a trick around that. You see, I'm no stranger when it comes to game mechanics and functions in Plants vs Zombies, and while restarting our level won't influence our greystone RNG in any way, restarting our entire game instead will reset the greystone placement in each level. Yes, I know, it is indeed a very painful process. to have to constantly restart your game for a more optimal gravestone layout, but if you're given something, even the shortest string to pull at, then you simply can't call this challenge impossible. And this is exactly what we're trying to determine here. That being said though, I still resorted to my third RNG manipulation method given the unforgiving nature of this level. People like to call it save scumming in this community, but another familiar term would be setting save states mid-game. The way it works is that each time you pause and exit a level, the game will create a save file that stores all the essential information for your progress of that level. The reason the game does that is so you're able to pick up a level where you left it by saving your progress, and it makes sense too. Imagine always having to restart your survival endless run because, yeah, the game didn't save your progress. But it's also easily exploitable. By finding the exact location of your stored save files in the hidden user data folder, it's very easy to make constant backups of your progress. This doesn't just help me with correcting my own mistakes on a level, but it also gains me control over another RNG factor. I've talked about the predetermined zombie seed before, and how it always spawns the exact zombies in the exact waves. However, one thing the zombie seed doesn't determine is the lane in which the zombie will spawn. Instead, a real-life RNG function within the game gets triggered that will determine the lanes in which each zombie can spawn in. This means by going back in the past with loading our save states, we're able to manipulate the zombie lane spawn RNG. I used a total of 2 save states for night 2, but since I've spliced my recording footage here, it will just look like some regular recorded footage to you. Thankfully this was barely just enough to get ourselves up to night 6, while night 4 required me to sit down and drop a strategy that involves using fume shrooms and walnuts with a zombie seed that spawns a lot of screen or shield zombies, and using the save states method to manipulate them into the fume shroom lane. Night 3, 5 and 6 were beaten very easily without the help of any RNG manipulation due to them just being one flag zombie introduction levels. The only thing you can call marginally interesting is that I limited my Gravebuster usage to the front 3 columns, which made the Whacker zombie minigame slightly harder. While manipulating most game variables into our favor, it sadly doesn't matter for too long since this next section will be absolutely relenting. We enter night 7 and then, boom, disaster strikes. It's the first level that made me regret starting this challenge. You have massive sun shortages, zombies spawn too quickly, we have gravestones spawning outside of our available planting space, and to top it all off, every tile, except for 7, are entirely blocked by gravestones. I mean, you might as well just put me inside one of these gravestones, gang. So well, how do we beat it? I mean, we do have access to the 3 different RNG manipulation methods, but even though I could use save states, manipulate the RNG from my gravestones, and pick my most ideal zombie seed, I wasn't even coming close to beating this level. However, neither of these techniques will help with this section in particular. There just simply isn't much you can do here. You have no sun and the zombies will overwhelm you in no time. I've literally spent days trying to find any working solution, but it just seemed completely out of reach, and I hate to say this, but I just can't do this. At least, not without some help. You see, all this time we've only had access to soft manipulation tools, but Plants vs Zombies uses RNG literally everywhere. Whether it's the speed of a zombie, the speed of your sun producer generating the next sun unit, when the next wave gets triggered when a 50% rule isn't applied, or something as simple as your mushrooms registering zombies at the earliest possible time. Those are all RNG parameters we aren't able to touch as of now, but seeing how impossible beating 2.7 up to 2.9 seems, I had to finally accept my defeat and resort into borrowing something from the speedrunner community. A proper tool-assisted speedrunning tool that will give me full control over all the RNG factors and variables to the game, so I can prove that a theoretical solution to this problem does in fact exist. You see, my fellow YouTuber Aaron the Winner has made a tutorial on how to use tasks in PvZ. Check out his channel by the way if what he does appeals to you. Seriously, he's a pretty cool guy. This tool, like almost everything else, has been engineered by the Chinese PvZ community, so huge shoutouts to all of my Chinese viewers out there. Also, for practical purposes, I've decided to allow myself to use Gravebusters anywhere on the map, since they technically don't need any grass, considering they're classified as flying plants by the game. And while it's still technically possible to beat this level without any Gravebusters in columns 5 and 6, it will make things less elegant and even more RNG dependent. What you see in the background is a hyper-optimal semi-automated run. Some processes produce sun on the theoretical shortest time, and the zombie spawn, speed, as well as seed are predetermined. I try to only ever use it when I truly have no other options, and in this specific case, having a level as horrible as these was my only justification in using the full task solution to show the theoretical limits and potential of Plants vs Zombies. This is also how I beat day 5 earlier, without using anything other than my lawnmowers, and with night 9 done, we officially escaped the impossible nightmare section of this challenge. Unless you count the task solution as me failing the challenge, but that would just be so rude if you did. Let's check out the final night level of this chapter, and it turns out that I didn't even have to use my brain once for night 10. The game generously grants you enough explosive power to easily defeat all the zombies in here. Yes, Doomshroom is still OP. Who would have guessed? It isn't without its weaknesses, however. Only having access to 15 tiles in total means that the Doomshroom creator can and will mess you up if you're not careful with it. Also, F in the chat for Scaredy Shroom. Yeah, you kinda suck, bro. We've arrived in World 3, with its main gimmick being the extra 2 water lanes in the middle. This is also the first world that introduces 3 flag levels to us, which also means that now we have to somehow deal with a high zombie density. But, believe it or not, pool has actually been the easiest section of this challenge, and we can all thank the water lanes for that. You see, while zombies are able to put on a rubber ducky tube which allows them to swim, they're not really allowed to spawn after wave 5, which means that we have a nice safe place for our sun producers during our early game. Also, regaining access to the sun from the sky also meant that we are now finally able to make use of our snow piece again. Thank goodness for that. Pool 4 was as usual the hardest early game pool level, since it was the only one which featured 3 flags as well as snorkel zombies, but we're unlucky since by now we have access to some of the best plants in this entire challenge, which are Squash and 3-peater. While 3-peater is very expensive and important to keep alive, it grants you a huge payoff of being able to make the most use out of the very little space we have. I'm not even kidding, this plant was literally made for this challenge. Well, at least that's what I thought before I was suddenly punched in my guts by a pole vaulting zombie. Yes, they do appear in Pool 4, and the only purpose they serve is to make me feel sad and unaccomplished. Well, I guess it's time to move my 3-peaters into the water lane for now, and at the end of this level our defense was left in complete shamble. But I guess we did beat it, and that's what truly counts, right? Wait what? There will be a water variant of pole vaulting zombie later on? Oh god. Pool 5 was completely unproblematic due to the nature of walnuts and cherry bombs. Honestly, I even think restricting myself to the front columns only made this level even easier, since it perfectly grouped up every single zombie for my cherry bombs. And them spawning faster also makes cherry bombs a lot better. Oh yeah, also make sure that you buy the pool cleaner upgrade from the shop, since ambush zombies are able to spawn on column 6, avoiding all of your plants. This was also the level where I decided to put a red line in the background to better symbolize where the border of our challenge lies. Huge shoutouts to Andreco, who provided us with the water bowling stripes image for our community DLC mod. Nope, not this time. Normally Zamboni poses a huge problem when doing challenges like these, but here we are able to deal with him in 2 different ways. One of them is by using Squash, and the second way is to deal with him via Chomper. Yes, apparently plants are able to swallow an entire vehicle. Like, bro, seriously? Well, anyway, I was experimenting with Twin Sunflower in Pool 6, but it turned out not to be a worthwhile investment. Yes, it is very space efficient, but with a cost of 200 in total, it's also very slow at the same time. Plus, the worst part is that it's wasting a whole seed slot, and with just Snopies and Chompers alone, I was just barely able to beat this level. Pool 7, however, required a more solid strategy, since we now have to face off 3 flags instead of 2, which exponentially increases the zombie density. Also, we now have access to spike weeds, which will play a big role in keeping the Zambonis in check, and remember that if you wait for too long, the Zambonis will start to cover your entire planting space with ice, so you can't really afford to sleep on them here. I didn't use spike weeds here, since Pool 7 doesn't spawn that many Zambonis, which is weird considering this level has 3 flags compared to the previous one, only having 2. But since the last one was an introduction level, the game will forcibly spawn the new zombies in earlier. This forced spawn mechanic doesn't really exist outside of the introduction levels, but don't worry, Spike will play a big role in just a few moments. Pool 8 as well as Pool 9 both feature dolphin zombies, and yes, they are a pain in the butt to deal with. First of all, they completely ignore the last column for some reason, meaning they don't care whether or not a tall nut is there. That would potentially block their leap, and they also jump from column 8 at best. For Pool 8, this means that they'll always land on column 7, considering you have a plan on column 8. I think you can see where this is going. No amount of snow peas or repeaters would prevent the dolphin rider zombies from breaking through our defense, so I had to come up with a new plan. Instead of trying to beat them off with damage, I was basically forced to resort to an instant explosive plant in order to deal with them. This means that squash and tangle kill are my only way to deal with dolphin zombies, while also trying to keep up the amphibious zombies that also appear in the pool. And while this was barely doable in Pool 8, for Pool 9 I wasn't so lucky. Zombies here are way too plentiful and spamming instant plants aren't sustainable here. Thankfully the game gives us a tool to fend off those dolphin zombies as well. I'm talking about tall nuts of course, and while putting them on column 9 works for the pole vaulting zombies, dolphin zombies would just straight up ignore them. So for the water lanes we had to place them down on column 8 instead. But this is still exciting news, since now we're able to have 2 permanent snow peas in the water, and similar to Walnut, Tallnut is just a godsend for this challenge. I'm serious, people don't appreciate how good Tallnut really is. It only truly shows its huge potential when doing extreme challenges like these, where we push PvZ1 to its most outer limits. Remember this the next time you decide to put Tallnuts or Walnuts in C tier when making a tier list. Pool 10 is a really bad level. The zombie density is very high, jalapenos isn't playable when a Zamboni freezes your tiles, and the RNG in the conveyor belt, well, let's just say it's awful. Especially when you get something like Torchwood a lot, which normally wouldn't be a big deal, but you literally have no place to put him since column 7 is reserved for your 3-peaters, column 8 for your Tallnut, and column 9 for your spikeweeds for Zambonis. And even in the water lane you have to place down your Tallnuts in column 8 because of stupid dolphin zombies. Do not fear, however, for an embarrassing amount of attempts and saves coming, I was eventually determined and lucky enough to beat the stupid jalapeno RNG fest. It just took me like 4 hours to beat. Oh yeah, sometimes the game also screws you by swarming you with lots of Zambonis while also not providing you with any spikeweeds or jalapenos at all. All in all, this level is just a horrible RNG test, but we've dealt with much worse than that, so let's just move on to the next stage. Oh god. Okay, hear me out. I know this looks really bad at first. I also thought that the fog, which was this main world's gimmick, would be way more problematic as it can severely limit our options. But we just beat a world where we literally had 7 tiles of planting space. So, how bad can losing our vision be? Turns out, Fog 1 isn't advanced too much with the fog, which means that we'll have a full vision for the 7th column, which will come in handy. It's also just a 1 flag level, which means that our lawnmowers are a lot stronger. Fog 2, however, is a whole other story, and it marks the beginning of our struggle in World 4. We now need to somehow survive 2 flags, and with each level we further progress in this world, our vision will just keep dwindling. Okay, so, what now? What can I possibly do to salvage this run? Well, luckily we got 2 things playing into our favors here. First of all, we did just unlock Plantain, which for this channel in particular will become a must-pick plant. It's the only real affordable way to regain our vision. There's also a cool little feature we can use to our advantage. Well, you see, the fog doesn't cover every single spot. There are little pockets of air that allow us to see little movements for a second. So we need to pick up on that. Zombies in lane 1 are always visible because of their heads sticking out of the fog. And yes, while we still need Plantain to gain full vision, these visual cues will become crucial for the early game of each fog level. As for Plantain itself, there's only really one spot you can place him, which is row 4, column 8, and the reason is simple. Since we did learn from before that lane 1 will always be visible to us, and Plantain in 4-8 will give us access to every single row for maximum visibility. However, even with all of these visual cues, beating these levels aren't easy. After a few more hours of failing, I finally discovered a new technique which would be revolutionary for my strategy in the early game. You know, all this time I've been trying to beat this level by spamming pushrooms everywhere. But this was a problem because it triggered the second wave way too fast, which in turn was really bad for my sun economy. But not beating the first zombie and letting him walk up to your lawnmower, the extra time you gain by not spawning the second wave in too early will grant you enough leverage for keeping up with the tempo of this game. You know, it's not just the sun production that profits from the extra runtime. You also have more time to pre-place more pushrooms down, since one pushroom won't be enough to deal with a lone basic zombie most of the time. Depending on the zombie speed, of course. With this new method, I was barely able to escape the early stage of my level, and later I would even spend time optimizing the strategy even further. I started by placing my first and second sunrooms down in row 2 and 5 on column 7, while also placing 2 pushrooms in each row 2 and 5. The reason is because row 1 as well as row 6 allow me to see the zombies since they have the visual cues if a zombie is there. Before placing down your third sunshroom, you'll have to wait and see where the first zombie spawns. If he spawns in lane 1, then place your sunshroom in lane 6, including with 2 more pushrooms, and let the lawnmower deal with the basic zombie on lane 1, and vice versa. Use the sound cue for whenever a pushroom on column 9 gets eaten. After the swallow sound effect, just spam your pushrooms everywhere in the 9th column, since that's the only way to really repair them. After your 5th sunshroom in lane 3 column 7, you can finally start placing down your first plantain in 4-8, and use C-shrooms for 5-7, since you need to be able to deal with basic zombies in that particular water lane. Otherwise you'll lose your plantain and it's a downway spiral from here. Fork 3 as well as Fork 4 will be quite annoying since you have to deal with balloon zombies here. Blowover is out of the question since it's not affordable, but luckily we're able to clutch this level out with just our lawnmowers and a lucky zombie seed, of course. Even Jack-in-the-Box explosion zombies became a really big problem, which normally they aren't too bad to deal with. Fork 5 is our next minigame level, which is also known as Vase Breaker, and we sorta ran into yet another problem here. The 3rd as well as 4th stage of this minigame feature vases outside of our allowed planting space. Every single attempt just seemed barely out of reach. The first stage is an auto win since we get exactly as many squashes as there are zombies. The 3rd stage can be skipped with our lawnmowers, but that means that we can't lose a single one on the 2nd stage, and sadly, we don't have enough squashes to cleanly beat every single zombie here. And with our P-shields all the way in the front, they essentially become useless. Wait a second. Did you see that? Rewind the tape. Yes, you're indeed seeing that right. With some pre-calculated timing, we're able to use one squash for multiple zombies. That's it. This was exactly what we needed to successfully beat the 2nd stage without losing a single lawnmower. And as mentioned before, we can simply skip the last section by playing our favorite lawnmower simulator game. Fork 6, 7, 8 as well as 9 were all a little bit tricky at the beginning, because the fork basically covered most of my screen, including the red border which determined where I was able to plant my plants. Because of this, I always had to hope and pray that I didn't accidentally misplace my sunflowers every time I would get to the plantain phase of my setup. I had to restart many runs because of crossing the line, but eventually I was able to make my setup work. It also should be noted that I'm skipping the notorious grinding stage for this challenge, which means that I was able to upgrade my total seed slots with the 10 seed slot upgrade, which is very important to make Fork 9 work specifically, since it's a 2 flag level with balloon zombies, meaning I would allow myself to have a blowover just in case. Squash, sea shroom, ice shroom, doom shroom, as well as walnuts are pretty much also a must pick, since they're the only solution I could come up with. For a welcoming change, Fork 10 was actually pretty easy to beat. Normally, this is one of the breaking points for any PvZ challenge due to the absence of any explosive plants, but it almost seems like this level was made for this challenge. Starfruits deal excellent damage per second, while Magnetrons are able to deal with the huge amount of buckethead zombies on your field. Pumpkins are preventing the zombies from breaking through. Split Peas become a really cool tool, because now you get to utilize its backwards 2p ability more, which makes it feel more on par with the reverse repeater you can find in the Vase Breaker levels. At this point, I was feeling really good with my progress, and with this normally cancerous level gone, I felt like I was off to a great start in completing this challenge. What comes next can only be described as one of the most impossible sections we've seen yet. Oh my god, no. After so many hours, after wasting so many attempts, after gathering so much information about the game, and after spending hours to set up my RNG manipulation setups, I was finally met with a challenge that had absolutely no solutions. The level itself is a paradox to this entire challenge, because the first plant we unlock before entering the stage is Cabbage Pole. And without flower pots, I'm not able to place any of my plants down, since the game only pre-places 5 columns of flower pots in the very back of your roof. And while beating some levels, especially 1 flag levels, are technically possible with some RNG manipulation, this level was one of the few exceptions, since we're not able to buy the roof cleaner upgrade from the shop until the next level. Sadly, all of this was enough to completely sabotage my run and shatter all of my dreams and hopes in completing this unsolved challenge. It really pains me here to say this, but this is where this challenge officially ends. And while I am very sad about this outcome, I'm honestly surprised that I got this far, all things considered, and while attempting this challenge, I've also gathered a ton of new information about my favorite childhood game, which genuinely makes me happy. And you know what they say, it's the journey that counts, not the destination. I won't end the video right here, because you guys deserve to see the very end of this challenge. So, instead of determining whether or not it's possible to beat Plants vs Zombies with 3 columns in the front alone, similar to the 1 column challenge, where level 1-1 was literally impossible, we'll instead modify our challenge into can you beat Plants vs Zombies with only the front 3 columns except for level 5-1. And by using my modding skills, like how I modified the walnut bowling game from earlier, I've changed the locations of my flower pots that spawn at the very beginning, making this level have actual solutions now. Also, keep in mind that jalapeno will become a very important plant for the remainder of the stage, since ambush zombies can spawn outside of your planting space, which makes jalapeno the only plant in the game that can correct that lane, until we unlock coffee bean for our doom shrooms of course. In Roof 2 and Roof 3, I was a complete idiot because I forgot to buy the roof cleaner upgrades. But I was still able to form a working solution that was making use out of the 50% spawn rule function. You see, we don't have that many options when it comes to our early game, but one of the things you don't want to do is to beat your first early game zombie with a squash. It will just trigger the next wave too early and you will quickly find yourself overrun. Instead, we use walnuts very early on, since they're insanely good at stalling out the zombies. This buys us enough time to ramp up our sun economy on time, and because I had no lawnmowers for my early game, because, you know, I forgot to buy them, I had to rely on the second zombie to spawn in the same lane that the third zombie spawned in, which sucks, especially when you know that the probability is like 5% instead of 25%. The game makes it less likely for the second zombie to spawn in the same row, but yeah, just don't be like me and just buy your roof cleaners. With 2 zombies on my walnuts, I was now able to use my squash to clear out 2 zombies at once, and from here it's just a matter of building up my momentum and defense. Also, make sure that you're using starfruits for this level, since he has the best DPS to cost ratio in the entire game. In Roof 4, we're not able to use starfruits as our main attackers anymore because of the massive zombie density the game throws at us. Luckily, it also marks the very first level where we gain access to coffee beans, which is also a very important plant now. By using this Magnetrum Gloomshroom setup, we are basically able to deal with the massive zombie density on this level, while also not dying to all of the magnetic zombies. Also, Gloomshroom is just busted. He deals heavy damage to an infinite amount of zombies, which makes him one of the best plants in this entire game. We use pumpkins to ensure our Gloomshroom safety, and since I remembered to buy the roof cleaner updates in the shop, my early game was also a lot more viable and easier to set up now. Ladder zombies are a pain in the butt to deal with, and while this might seem like a working solution, the next level will question its viability. Roof 5 is our final minigame for this video, and with it, it marks yet another roadblock in our journey. Well, this minigame loves to spawn zombies outside of our planting space, and neither Chomper or Cherry Bomb are able to backtrack the zombies that have surpassed the line of defense. Okay, while this level isn't possible in a real run, it isn't quite impossible on paper. You can probably see where this is going. With almost perfect RNG, you are able to beat this level with cherry bombs alone, while no zombie spawns in column 5. The zombie spawning in column 6 means that a cherry bomb in column 7 will be able to beat these zombies. And that is pretty much the solution of beating Roof 5 in an almost perfect scenario. I know it's not the prettiest way, but at least we can call this level technically possible, unlike 5-1. Roof 6 as well as Roof 7 face us with another unique problem. Catapult zombies. They're not only a threat to our sunflowers in the back, no, they also crush down our gloomshrooms in column 8. But don't worry, I already have a solution to this. Who said we had to use pumpkins in this level? Are you confused already? Here, let me explain. Pumpkin isn't just a shield you put onto your plants, it also increases the hitbox of your plants by a significant amount. This is the exact same reason why we can save a plant quickly before Gargantua smashes in. In this case, getting rid of your pumpkins will prevent any catapult zombies from crushing your column 8 gloomshrooms. Just keep in mind that your gloomshrooms are more vulnerable in this state, and depending on the zombie speed you get, they won't 100% survive attack from coconut zombies when you have 2 gloomshrooms stacked up. Roof 8 and Roof 9 featured Gargantuas, and because of this, Roof 9 was the most painful level I've played in this entire world. It took me so many attempts because the zombie selection here is just awful. Jack-in-the-box explosion zombies ended multiple of my runs before, ladder zombies render your pumpkins or your walnuts useless, catapult zombies mess up your pumpkin placement every once in a while, and Gargantua just completely annihilates an entire lane unless you're willing to spend a squash plus a jalapeno on him, which most of the times you can't even afford to. If not using your jalapeno, you run the danger of being screwed over by this imp, which just completely ignores all of your plants. And to top everything off, bungee zombies will very often steal your bloom shrooms because of how few plants there are on the field. I also got rid of my pumpkins entirely as they started to not add enough value, considering they get hard countered by both catapult zombies as well as gargantuous and even jack-in-the-box explosion zombies sometimes. Overall, it's a very painful experience, but far from some of the levels we've played early on this challenge, so I cannot really complain here. Welcome to the very last level of this challenge, the Dr. Zomboss fight. So, how on earth are we going to beat this? I mean, we can only use 2 columns in this boss fight since column 9 is completely occupied by Dr. Zomboss himself. We'll beat this Zomboss fight by exploiting 2 different game mechanics, which I've also covered in my PvZ flip as well as my PvZ 12x video before, so I'll just briefly go over them again. The first game mechanic we're going to exploit is the lawnmower delay rule. In normal PvZ, zombies have different rules that determine in which lane they can spawn in. When losing a lawnmower, the lane where the lawnmower was lost in will be locked in any upcoming zombie spawns for exactly 2 waves. It solely exists to make the game more player friendly towards the beginners. While the Zomboss fight is a very special exception to this rule, while the zombies can spawn in the same lane after a lawnmower gets triggered for 2 waves, it won't actually matter here since the final boss fight has no wave progression whatsoever. Zomboss is simply treated as a normal zombie by the game, and him spawning near zombies isn't tied to the wave progression at all. Because of this, we can completely eliminate 4 out of 5 lanes for the remainder of this fight, which will make our jalapenos 5 times more efficient. The second game mechanic I'm going to exploit here is the fact that no Gargantua is able to spawn in lane 1 ever, unless you're playing any survival game mode. The reason is so Gargantua's big animation won't be able to cover up your seed slots, meaning it was just intended as a quality of life change. The same thing happens to dancing zombies by the way, outside of survival, since he will only be able to spawn in lanes 1 and 3 to make sure that he will always spawn for backup dancers. And with that, it's very easy to see that the boss fight is indeed possible with just 2 front columns. But it was also a huge danger which caused me to die once. Well, you need to always have a jalapeno saved up in your conveyor bank in case of a Zamboni spawning. When missing the short time window where you need to place the jalapeno down, you will most likely lose because the ice will prevent you from planting anything on your lawn. And there you have it, this marks the end of our journey here. And while we did encounter many horrible bad levels, including the one that was literally impossible, I'm just happy to be finally done with this challenge. I want to quickly thank Matikin, Bionic Agron, Memory, Bin PvZ as well as Booby for being our amazing channel members. I also want to thank everybody who stayed until the very end. Check out the 12x HP video in case you've missed it. And with all of that, I wish you all a beautiful day and I hope everyone stays nice and healthy.